Thank you, Doug. Well, behind the smile lies a silent struggle. Spouses and partners of first responders dealing with mental health issues often take on their own trauma being by their side.
And it's a story rarely told from that perspective. Tonight, Erika Gonzalez shines a light on these silent warriors and shares a local woman's powerful story in hopes of changing minds.
Hawkins and Eric Provo have been married for 11 years and together share 3 decades of service as first responders.
In my job, I deal with folks who have mental illness all the time, as a police officer. And I have dealt with veterans and a lot. And I know the signs and symptoms. And Eric was the poster child.
We first met the couple back in 2018 after appearing in a video for local police and fire departments where first responders publicly shared their mental health battles in hopes of shattering the stigma and shame that keep many from speaking up and seeking treatment. In that clip, Eric, a retired combat veteran and firefighter, opened up about his recent suicide attempt.
I just got irrational, and I felt that if I take my own life, then I no longer suffer and she no longer has to suffer.
Eric got help, and Meg was the support he needed. But years later, she needed help of her own.
I was always going 110 miles an hour, always focusing on Eric, his health, his mental health, his physical health. I was his person. I was his service human. And once he got healthy, my body and my mind just crashed. I was diagnosed with moderate PTSD from the night that Eric went missing.
Suicide claims more police and firefighter lives than any of the dangers they face on the job. First responders are 5 times more likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, with 85% of first responders reporting symptoms related to mental health conditions. Yet, we rarely hear about the spouses and partners who serve as caretakers and the toll it takes on their mental health.
I didn't realize just how much work it was on her.
I call the spouses and the significant others of first responders and veterans that have PTSD and other mental illness the silent warriors.
Meg admits she was struggling in silence, trying to manage her own PTSD, until she found Dr. Marina Protopappas at National Spine and Pain Centers in Fairfax.
PTSD is traditionally thought to be a psychologically mediated process. In fact, there have been studies that have shown that it's actually a neurologically mediated process. This is your spine.
Dr. Protopappas suggested a new procedure called stellate ganglion block, often referred to as an SGB shot, used for decades to treat chronic pain, but only recently for PTSD in veterans and first responders.
Veterans, police officers, soldiers that have been exposed to trauma, you can think of it as bombing or any kind of extensive trauma. It could just be one event that happens. Think of it as becoming a hyperactive, consistent message that hits the brain. And by blocking these nerves, you actually help reduce that fight or flight, and you reduce that hyperactivity of the brain. And it helps control patients that have PTSD.
Using X-ray imaging and contrasting dye to guide the needle, the doctor injects medication into a bundle of sympathetic nerves in front of the neck, the ones that regulate the brain's fight or flight reactions, which seemingly calms symptoms of PTSD.
It's almost like a switch. It kind of like turns off or resets the sympathetic kind of driving system that is creating the sense of anxiety.
Meg has now had 2 treatments about a month apart and says the difference is dramatic.
Obviously, I was trained to be hypervigilant, so it's like a double whammy for me. But the shot, when it's done, turns that down. It's like night and day. And it's easy, it's quick, it's not super painful at all.
There's not a lot of long-term data on the shot's effectiveness still. It's shown promise in a clinical trial funded by the U.S. Army and published in JAMA Psychiatry. And the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs continues to evaluate the shot's effectiveness as a PTSD treatment. Among the 5 VA facilities in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C., only 2 offer the treatment, and both are outside our area.
There's really not a lot of support for other spouses, like I said, but I'm working on that.
That's why Meg is sharing her story, going beyond the badge in hopes of helping first responders and their partners dealing with the invisible wounds of trauma. Erika Gonzalez, News 4.
Together, Meg and Eric started a nonprofit called Making Everything Good to help veterans and first responders. They're setting up a support group and wellness app and hope to find funding to cover the cost of the SGB shot for first responders in need. Despite its promise, the SGB shot is still considered experimental and typically not covered by insurance. We'll be right back.